In a city where everyone wears a mask, the most dangerous people are the ones you never notice at all. The Azure Table wasn't a restaurant. It was a fortress disguised as indulgence. Politicians whispered treaties over Wagyu. Actors hid scandals behind tasting menus. And men like Daniel Kang came to pretend the blood on their empires had long since dried. He sat beneath amber light that cost more per hour than most people earned in a week, cufflinks catching gold, jaw carved from stone and silence. To the world scrolling past his name on Forbes, he was the visionary who transformed nightclubs into empires and violence into venture capital. To those who whispered his real name, Dae-hyun, he was still the tiger of Busan, still the man who'd walked out of Korea with blood under his nails and a fortune built on fear. Tonight, he was trying to believe in civilization. Across the polished expanse of marble and murmured conversations, Riley Clayton moved like water through stone. She didn't smile the way the other waitresses did. Bright, performative, designed to disappear into gratitude. Her face carried the kind of stillness that came from seeing too much and surviving it quietly. Her hands, elegant and steady as a surgeon's, refilled wine glasses and cleared plates with a precision that seemed almost military. Daniel noticed. He told himself he shouldn't have. But there was something in the way she scanned the room, not with a server's practiced efficiency, but with a soldier's instinct. Her eyes mapped exits, like other people memorized wine lists. Her posture suggested coiled readiness, not deference. She moved through the space as if constantly calculating angles, distances, threats that didn't exist. Except tonight they did. At 9:16 p.m., the first gunshot cracked the air like a champagne bottle shattering against concrete. By 9:17, the Azure Table had become a different kind of cage entirely. One where the walls were fear, the bars were bullets, and the only key to survival was a woman no one had bothered to see. But to understand how a waitress became the only thing standing between a mafia boss and death, you need to understand that Riley Clayton wasn't born in the shadows of Los Angeles restaurants. She was forged somewhere far darker, in the kind of places where governments sent people they wanted to forget, to do work they'd never acknowledge. And Daniel Kang? He'd spent a lifetime believing power made him untouchable. Tonight, 5 men with military precision and a vendetta older than his American empire were about to teach him otherwise. Welcome back, my beautiful souls and kindred spirits. Before we start, go ahead and subscribe, like, and share where you're watching from. It always warms my heart to see our little storytelling family stretch across the world. Every click, every comment, every bit of love you give helps us keep uncovering these unforgettable stories together. So find your quiet place, settle in, and let me take you somewhere you've never been before. The glass didn't shatter. It detonated. One moment, the Azure Table hummed with the rhythm of wealth and whispered power. The next, the world became teeth and claws wrapped in gunfire. Riley's body reacted before thought could intervene. The metallic bite of gunpowder hit her senses. Sharp, familiar, almost nostalgic. Her knees bent, center of gravity dropping as chaos bloomed around her like a deadly flower. 5 men, black tactical gear, weapons raised with the confidence of those who'd killed before and expected to kill again. They poured through the shattered window with military precision, and every instinct Riley had buried came screaming back to life. But these weren't amateurs storming a restaurant, and the man they'd come for wasn't cowering. Daniel Kang moved like liquid violence. The first operative reached for him, and Daniel's hand shot out, faster than a man in a tailored suit should move, catching the gunman's wrist and twisting with brutal efficiency. Bone cracked. The weapon clattered to marble floor. Daniel drove his knee into the man's solar plexus, then his elbow into the bridge of his nose. The operative went down hard, blood spreading across expensive Italian leather shoes. 2 more rushed him from opposite sides. Daniel swept left, avoiding the first man's grab, and caught the second by the throat. His fingers dug into pressure points with surgical precision, the kind of knowledge that came from ending lives, not just threatening them. The man's eyes rolled back. Daniel released him, letting him drop, then spun into the first attacker with a roundhouse kick that connected with devastating force. This wasn't a businessman defending himself. This was the tiger of Busan, and he'd never actually stopped hunting. But the remaining two had flanked him. Weapons trained center mass. Professional. Patient. Waiting for the kill shot. Riley moved. She grabbed the serving tray she'd been holding and hurled it like a discus. It caught the left gunman across the temple, staggering him. Then she was in motion, closing the distance with fluid grace, snatching a wine bottle from the nearest table. She didn't throw it. She used it, smashing it against the bar's edge and driving the jagged glass into the flanking operative's weapon hand. He screamed. The gun fell. She swept his legs, and he crashed into a table that splintered under his weight. The last man standing swung his weapon toward her. Daniel was already there, catching the gun barrel and twisting it upward as it discharged into the ceiling. Plaster rained down. Daniel drove his forehead into the man's face. A vicious headbutt that shattered cartilage, then ripped the weapon free and used it as a club, bringing it down on the operative's skull with finality. Silence fell like a curtain. 5 men lay broken on the floor. Daniel stood among them, chest heaving, suit torn at the shoulder, a thin line of blood trickling from his hairline. He looked like a god of war dressed for a board meeting, and Riley stood frozen, watching him, realizing she hadn't saved him at all. He'd been managing just fine. Their eyes met across the wreckage. His gaze was dark, intense, burning with something that made her breath catch. Not gratitude, not relief, something hungrier, more dangerous. "You fight well," he said, voice rough with adrenaline. "But you hesitated. That last man. You left him for me." "I didn't." Riley stopped. She had hesitated. Just for a fraction of a second, her body had recognized him as an equal threat, not someone who needed protecting. Daniel stepped over bodies like they were furniture, moving toward her with predatory focus. Blood stained his cufflinks. His jaw was set. He looked magnificent and terrifying. "Who are you?" Not a question. A demand. Riley's pulse hammered. Someone who should have stayed invisible. Too late for that. He was close now. Close enough that she could smell his cologne, sandalwood, and something darker, more primal, mixed with gunpowder and violence. "You move like a soldier, fight like an operative, but you serve drinks in my restaurant." "Your restaurant?" "I own this place. Own most of the block." His eyes never left hers. "Which means you work for me. And you just killed men in my establishment without permission." The air between them crackled with tension. Riley should run, should disappear into the Los Angeles night and never look back. But something held her in place. The way he looked at her, like she was a puzzle he intended to solve with his bare hands if necessary. Sirens wailed in the distance. "The police are coming," Riley said quietly. "You need a story." "I have one." Self-defense. 5 armed men, attempted kidnapping, civilian casualties avoided. Daniel tilted his head. "But you won't be here for it, will you? You'll vanish. Because women like you don't talk to police." He knew. Somehow, he knew. Riley took a step back. Daniel matched it forward. "Stay," he said. Simple. Commanding. The voice of a man accustomed to obedience. "I don't take orders." "Then take advice. Los Reyes sent these men. They know about you now. About what you can do. That makes you valuable. Or a liability." His gaze intensified. "I'm offering protection. I don't need it. Everyone needs something." He raised his hand slowly, deliberately, and wiped a speck of blood from her cheek with his thumb. The touch was electric, intimate, possessive, even ghosts. Riley's breath stuttered. His hand lingered at her jaw, warm and solid, and for one impossible moment she wanted to lean into it, wanted to let someone else carry the weight she'd been dragging for years. Then reason returned. She stepped back, breaking contact. "This was a mistake," she whispered. "No." Daniel's voice was certain. Final. This was fate. Riley turned and ran, disappearing through the kitchen exit before he could stop her, before her treacherous body could betray her further. But she felt his gaze on her back the entire way. Hot, possessive, inevitable. Like a predator watching prey he'd already decided to claim. 48 hours after the Azure table became a crime scene, Daniel sat in his penthouse watching the city sprawl below like a circuit board of sin and ambition. The media had feasted on the story. Billionaire businessman survives assassination attempt. 5 attackers dead. Heroic self-defense. His lawyers had crafted the narrative perfectly. But Daniel wasn't thinking about optics. He was thinking about her. Riley Clayton. The name felt like a lie in his mouth. Everything about her was carefully constructed fiction. He'd confirmed that within 6 hours of her disappearance. No employment history before 2016. No paper trail. No digital footprint. Just a ghost wearing a waitress uniform, moving through his world like smoke. "Minjun," he said quietly. His head of security materialized from the shadows. "Sir, the woman from the restaurant. You found her?" "Yes and no." Minjun set a tablet on the desk. "She quit via text message 3 hours after the incident. No forwarding address. But our contacts spotted her in Koreatown. Place called the Brass Lantern, dive bar. She's tending bar there now." Daniel's lips curved, still hiding in plain sight, still serving drinks, playing invisible, as if she could erase what he'd witnessed, what they'd shared in those brutal seconds of synchronized violence. "There's more," Minjun continued. "Los Reyes. We identified the men from the restaurant. Ex-military, Mexican-Korean crew. And we found this." He swiped to a photo. A tattoo. A crowned skull with a serpent coiled through empty eye sockets. Daniel's jaw tightened. Paulo Reyes. His father's death still weighs heavy. Word on the street says Paulo's made it personal. He's not interested in territory or profit anymore. He wants you humiliated, destroyed, dead. Then he'll have to stand in line. Daniel stood, buttoning his suit jacket. "I'm going out." "Sir, that's not." "Alone, Minjun." His security chief knew better than to argue. Daniel Kang hadn't survived 2 decades in this city by hiding behind bodyguards. He'd survived by being more dangerous than anything that hunted him. The drive to Koreatown took 30 minutes through evening traffic. Daniel piloted his Mercedes through neon-lit streets, past restaurants steaming with authentic cooking and shops selling dreams to immigrants who'd traded one struggle for another. This was his kingdom. Not the boardrooms and country clubs, but these streets where power spoke in languages the city pretended not to understand. The Brass Lantern occupied a corner lot, its flickering neon sign half dead. Inside, the air smelled like stale beer and resignation. A handful of regulars hunched over drinks, nursing wounds that had nothing to do with violence and everything to do with living. And behind the bar, moving with that same hypnotic grace, was Riley. She looked up when he entered, their eyes locked across the room, and Daniel felt it again, that electric jolt of recognition, of 2 predators circling, deciding whether to fight or mate. She didn't look surprised, just resigned. Daniel sat at the bar. She approached slowly, like someone approaching a tiger's cage. "Whiskey," he said. "The expensive kind you keep for people who actually matter." Riley's lips twitched. Almost a smile. "We don't have expensive anything here." "Then give me whatever helps people forget." She poured bottom-shelf bourbon into a smudged glass, slid it across scarred wood. Her fingers brushed his when he took it. Brief, electric, deliberate. "You found me," she said quietly. "Was I not supposed to?" "Most people can't. Most people don't try." She resumed wiping down the bar with mechanical precision. "What do you want, Mr. Kang?" "Daniel. And I want to understand why you're still here. I work here. You know what I mean. Los Angeles. You could disappear. Go anywhere. Become anyone. Yet you stay. Serve drinks. Pretend to be normal." He leaned forward. "Why?" Riley's hands stilled. For a long moment she just stared at the bar's surface, and Daniel saw something flicker across her face. Pain, maybe, or the ghost of it. "Because running gets exhausting," she finally said. "And sometimes you get tired of being no one, even if being someone gets you killed." "Is someone hunting you?" Her eyes met his, dark, endless, always. "Then let me help." "You can't help me, Daniel. You can barely help yourself." She gestured vaguely toward the window. Los Reyes is coming for you. Really coming. The restaurant was just the opening move. I know. They hit one of my warehouses last night, killed 3 people, left the same calling card. He took a sip of the truly terrible whiskey. Which means you're right. They are coming. But they're also sloppy, emotional, and Paulo Reyes is young enough to make mistakes his father never would have. Youth doesn't mean weakness. Sometimes it means not caring about consequences. Neither does age. Daniel set down his glass. I've fought wars most people don't know exist, built an empire from blood and necessity, survived things that should have killed me, and in all that time, I've never met anyone who moved the way you do. Riley's breath caught, almost imperceptibly. You're romanticizing violence. No. I'm recognizing a kindred spirit. He stood, leaning across the bar until they were separated by inches. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. You felt it too. In that restaurant. When we fought together. The synchronization. The way we moved like we'd trained together for years instead of seconds. That's not. Don't lie to me, Riley. I can taste lies, and yours is bitter. His gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. You're hiding from something. Someone. And you're doing it alone because you think that's safety. But isolation isn't protection. It's just slow death. Her pupils dilated. Her pulse hammered visibly in her throat. Daniel watched her wage an internal war, between what she wanted and what she believed she deserved. I saved your life, she whispered. No. You joined me in saving both our lives. There's a difference. He reached across the bar, traced one finger along her jaw. She shivered but didn't pull away. Let me return the favor. By offering what? Money? Protection? Men with guns? By offering partnership. Equality. Respect. His thumb brushed her lower lip, and her breath hitched. By offering to see you. Actually see you. Not the mask. Not the ghost. The woman underneath. Riley's eyes glistened. You don't know what you're asking. Then tell me. Who are you really? Riley Clayton? The moment stretched between them. Taut, trembling, dangerous. Then Riley pulled back, breaking contact, and Daniel felt the loss like a physical wound. I'm someone who's seen what happens when people like us get too close, she said, voice thick. We burn everything we touch. Then let's burn together. Daniel straightened, adjusted his cufflinks with deliberate calm. Los Reyes is escalating. They'll hit me again soon, and when they do, they'll come harder, smarter, with better planning and more bodies. He met her gaze. I could use someone who understands how professionals think. Someone who fights like she was born to it. Someone who's survived things most people can't imagine. You're offering me a job? I'm offering you a choice. Keep hiding and hope they never connect you to me. Which they will, because they already have surveillance on this bar. Or stand with me and face what's coming together. Riley's face went pale. Surveillance? Daniel pulled out his phone, showed her the photos Minjun had sent. Black SUV, 3 men, parked across the street for hours, watching her building, watching the bar. They found you 12 hours ago, Daniel said quietly. I had my people scare them off, but they'll be back. And next time, they won't just watch. Riley stared at the photos, and Daniel watched her expression transform. The bartender vanished. The waitress disappeared. What remained was something colder, sharper, more dangerous. A weapon deciding whether to fire. When? She asked, voice flat. Tonight. Maybe tomorrow. Paulo's pattern suggests he likes dramatic statements. Fire, spectacle, maximum terror. Daniel pocketed his phone. He'll hit you when you're most vulnerable. Probably your apartment, probably while you sleep. Then I need to move. Now. Or you come with me. Daniel stepped back, giving her space to breathe, to think. My penthouse, full security, supplies, resources, everything you need to survive what's coming. And in exchange, help me find the leak in my organization. Someone told Los Reyes where to hit. Someone's feeding them intelligence. And I need that person identified before they get more of my people killed." His voice hardened. "After that, you're free to go. New identity if you want it. Clean papers. Money. Whatever you need to disappear properly." Riley studied him for a long moment, weighing options, calculating odds. "Why do you care?" she finally asked. "About me. About any of this. I'm just a waitress who happened to be there. Because I recognize you." Daniel held her gaze. "Not just what you can do, what you are. The way you carry violence like a second skin you've tried to shed but can't. The way you scan exits and assess threats, and never truly relax. Because you know peace is a fiction people tell themselves before the knives come out." He took a breath. "I see you, Riley. All of you. And I want you on my side when this city remembers what monsters look like." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning that had nothing to do with business, and everything to do with the electric charge that sparked whenever they were close. Riley closed her eyes. "This is a mistake. Probably. I'll destroy everything you've built. We'll see." When she opened her eyes again, they were clear. Decided. "One condition. I'm not your employee. I'm not your weapon. I'm your partner. Equal say. Equal risk." Daniel felt something in his chest. Satisfaction, maybe. Or the thrill of claiming something wild and dangerous. Partners, then. He extended his hand. Riley looked at it for a long moment, then reached across the bar and took it. Her grip was firm, calloused, strong. The handshake lasted longer than necessary, both of them unwilling to break contact. "I need to get my things," she said quietly. "I'll wait." She disappeared into the back room. Daniel stood at the bar, feeling the weight of eyes on him from the regulars who'd been pretending not to watch. He smiled, cold, predatory, and they quickly returned to their drinks. When Riley emerged 15 minutes later, she'd changed into dark jeans, boots, a leather jacket that had seen better days. She carried a small duffel bag that probably contained everything she owned in the world. Her hair was pulled back, face clean of makeup, and she looked younger, more vulnerable, more real. "Ready?" Daniel asked. Riley glanced around the bar one last time. At the neon light, the cracked vinyl stools, the carefully constructed anonymity she'd built. Then she looked at him. "Let's go hunt some ghosts." They walked out together into the Los Angeles night, and somewhere in the darkness, enemies watched and sharpened their knives. Daniel's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of a downtown high-rise that wore its wealth like armor. Glass and steel, and unobstructed views of a city that never stopped pretending it wasn't built on graves. Riley stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching traffic crawl below like illuminated blood cells through concrete arteries. 42nd floor, she said quietly. Good sightlines, multiple exit strategies through the building's structure, reinforced glass. You've thought about this. Daniel emerged from the bedroom in a black t-shirt and tailored slacks, looking somehow more dangerous without the suit's civilizing influence. I've survived a long time. Paranoia helps. That's not paranoia. That's trauma. Riley turned from the window. You've been hunted before. Many times. He moved to the bar cart, poured 2 glasses of something amber and expensive. Busan, Seoul, Hong Kong. Every city where I built power, someone wanted to take it. Eventually you learn to live like you're always under siege. He handed her a glass. Their fingers brushed. That same electric charge, but stronger now. More insistent. Riley took a sip. Single malt. Probably older than she was. It burned beautifully going down. Tell me about your organization. Structure. Key personnel. Who has access to operational intelligence? Business already? Daniel's lips curved. I thought we might share a drink first. Get to know each other beyond violence and survival. That's dangerous. I'm aware. He stepped closer. Not crowding, but close enough that his body heat radiated across the space between them. What are you afraid of, Riley? Everything. The word lodged in her throat. She was afraid of the way he looked at her, like she mattered, like she was more than a weapon someone had sharpened and discarded. afraid of the way her body responded to his proximity, the years of loneliness suddenly feeling like an open wound. "I'm afraid," she said carefully, "that you're confusing chemistry with connection. And if I'm not, then we're both in trouble." Daniel reached out slowly, giving her time to retreat, and tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was tender, devastating. "I've lived my entire life in trouble," he said softly. "One more disaster won't kill me." Riley's breath caught. His hand lingered at her cheek, thumb tracing her cheekbone with unbearable gentleness. She should step back, maintain professional distance. Remember that attachment was a vulnerability enemies would exploit. Instead, she leaned into his touch. "This is a mistake," she whispered, even as her hand came up to cover his. "You keep saying that." Daniel's other hand found her waist, pulling her incrementally closer. "But you're still here." "I'm practical. Your penthouse has better security than a bar." "Liar." The word was said with such warm certainty that Riley almost laughed. Instead, she looked up at him, at eyes dark with want and restraint, at a face that had seen too much violence to ever be truly soft but was trying anyway. "I don't know how to be close to someone without hurting them," she admitted. "Then we'll learn together." Daniel's forehead touched hers, their breath mingling in the small space between. "I'm not asking for perfection, Riley. I'm asking for honesty, for partnership. For whatever this is between us that feels like gravity and gasoline." Her hands found his chest, felt his heartbeat hammering beneath expensive cotton. Strong, steady, alive. When was the last time she'd touched someone with gentleness instead of violence? "If we do this," she said quietly, "if we cross this line, people will use it against us. Los Reyes, whoever I ran from, they'll see it as weakness. Let them try." Daniel's hands tightened at her waist. "I've spent 20 years being what everyone expected. The ruthless businessman, the tiger, the man without softness. Maybe it's time I stopped performing and started living." Riley looked up at him, searching for deception and finding only raw wanting. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you fight like war is a language you're fluent in. I know you hide because visibility means death. I know you're terrified of being seen and desperately lonely because of it." His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "I know what it's like to be a monster pretending to be a man. And I know I haven't stopped thinking about you since the moment you threw that tray and rewrote my entire understanding of fate." The words cracked something open inside her. Something she'd locked away so deep she'd forgotten it existed. The part that still believed in connection, in being known, in choosing someone instead of just surviving them. Daniel. His name was a surrender. He kissed her. Not rushed or frantic, but deliberate, claiming. His mouth moved against hers with the same precision he applied to everything. Controlled, thorough, devastating. Riley's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, and the kiss deepened, turned hungry, years of isolation burning away in the heat between them. Daniel's hand slid up her back, into her hair, tilting her head to take the kiss deeper. Riley gasped against his mouth, and he swallowed the sound, pressed her back against the window. Cool glass at her spine, his body heat at her front, and everywhere they touched felt like electricity arcing between raw wires. "Tell me to stop," he murmured against her lips. "Don't you dare." He smiled, wild and fierce and completely unguarded, then kissed her again. Harder this time, more desperate. His hands roamed her body with reverent urgency, tracing curves and angles, learning her topography like a map to salvation. Riley's fingers found the hem of his shirt, slid beneath it to touch bare skin. He groaned, the sound vibrating through her. Riley. Her name was a prayer, a curse, a question. "Bedroom," she managed. "Now." Daniel swept her into his arms, effortless, possessive, and carried her through the penthouse. Riley kissed his jaw, his neck, tasting salt and sandalwood and something uniquely him. He kicked open the bedroom door, laid her on Egyptian cotton sheets that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe, and covered her body with his. The city sprawled beyond the windows, an audience of neon and indifference. Inside, time slowed, fractured into sensation. The slide of fabric being removed, the gasp of skin meeting skin, the whispered confessions that came easier in darkness. Daniel kissed every scar he found, asked silent questions with his lips. Riley answered by pulling him closer, wrapping herself around him like armor, like absolution. They moved together with the same synchronized precision they'd shown in violence. Only now the battle was intimacy. The victory, vulnerability. When they finally came together, it felt less like passion and more like recognition. Two people who'd spent years being weapons finally remembering they were human. Afterwards, they lay tangled in sheets that smelled like sex and expensive detergent, breathing hard, skin cooling in the climate-controlled air. Daniel's hand traced idle patterns on her ribs. Riley's head rested on his chest, listening to his heartbeat return to normal. That was, he started. Yeah. Silence settled over them. Comfortable. Heavy with unspoken understanding. Riley? I need you to know something. Daniel's voice was serious. This isn't strategy. I didn't seduce you for tactical advantage or to secure your loyalty. Riley lifted her head, met his eyes in the dim light filtering through the windows. I know. Do you? She touched his face. The strong jaw, the small scar above his left eyebrow that probably had a violent story. I've been used before. Manipulated. Turned into a weapon by people who pretended to care. You're not them. How can you be sure? Because weapons recognize each other. She smiled. Small, sad, real. And you're just as broken as I am. Just as tired of pretending. That's not something you can fake. Daniel pulled her closer, pressed a kiss to her forehead. Stay. Not just tonight. For however long this takes. Until we find your leak and deal with Los Reyes. Until you don't want to run anymore. He met her gaze. Until you believe you deserve to stay somewhere. With someone. Riley's throat tightened. That might be never. Then I'll have you for never. Daniel's arms tightened around her. I've survived worse odds. She wanted to argue. To explain that people like them didn't get happy endings, only brief respites between disasters. But exhaustion was pulling at her. Emotional, physical, soul deep. And for the first time in years, she felt safe enough to let it win. Wake me if anything happens, she murmured against his chest. I will. Sleep, Riley. She did. And for once the nightmares stayed away. Outside, the city pulsed with violence waiting to be born. Los Reyes sharpened their knives. Old enemies stirred in shadows. And somewhere, a surveillance camera captured two figures tangled together in a penthouse bedroom. Proof that even monsters could find grace in each other's arms. The storm was coming. But for one perfect night, they pretended they couldn't hear the thunder. Riley woke to the smell of smoke. Her eyes snapped open, body already moving before conscious thought engaged. She was out of bed, pulling on clothes, scanning for threats in seconds. Daniel stood at the window, fully dressed, phone pressed to his ear, expression carved from ice. How many casualties? He demanded. Pause. Fuck, I'm on my way. He ended the call, turned to Riley. His eyes were dark with rage barely contained. The azure table is burning, he said flatly. Arson. 3 staff members dead. Los Reyes left a message spray-painted on the adjacent building. His jaw clenched. Tigers bleed too. Riley's blood turned cold. The staff. 2 servers. 1 sous chef. All people who'd been working there for years. Loyal. Innocent. Daniel's hands fisted at his sides. Paulo's escalating, making it personal. Showing me he can reach anyone connected to me. Connected to me. The words hung between them, heavy with implication. He knows about last night, Riley said quietly. Probably. My building has security, but surveillance is never perfect. If Los Reyes has been watching you, they saw you come here with me. Daniel crossed to her, gripped her shoulders. This is my fault. I should have been more careful. No. Riley met his gaze. This is war, and in war people get hurt. You didn't start this. Paulo did when he decided revenge was worth more than business. Doesn't matter who started it. I'm finishing it. His voice was granite. I'm going to the restaurant. I need to see what they left. What clues they... You're not going anywhere alone. That's what he wants. For you to be emotional, reckless, separated from your security. Riley pulled away, grabbed her jacket. We go together. Smart. Prepared. Riley. Partners, remember? Equal risk. She checked the concealed holster at her waist. The weapon Daniel had provided last night without asking, just understanding. Besides, you'll need someone who can read the scene. I've seen enough Black Ops arson to know what to look for. Daniel studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Minjun's already there securing the perimeter. We'll take the armored Mercedes. And Riley? His hand caught hers. Thank you, for not running. Where would I go? She squeezed his hand. Everywhere I've run, the fire follows. Might as well face it. They descended to the parking garage in tense silence. The Mercedes was black, bulletproof, and looked like it cost more than most people's houses. Daniel drove with controlled aggression, weaving through early morning traffic while Riley monitored their surroundings, checking mirrors, scanning rooftops, looking for the telltale signs of ambush. The Azure table was still burning when they arrived. Fire trucks sprayed water into what had been a temple of wealth, now reduced to blackened bones and ash. Police had cordoned off the block. Media vans circled like vultures. And standing amid the chaos, coordinating firefighters and investigators, was Minjun. He spotted Daniel immediately, jogged over to the Mercedes. Sir, you shouldn't be here. This is still an active scene and... Report, Daniel interrupted, climbing out of the car. Minjun glanced at Riley. A flicker of surprise quickly masked, then focused on Daniel. Accelerant used was professional grade, multiple ignition points. They knew the building's structure, where to hit for maximum damage. 3 casualties confirmed, all by smoke inhalation before the flames spread. And sir, he hesitated. There's something you need to see. They followed him around the perimeter, past exhausted firefighters and grim-faced investigators. The adjacent building's brick wall had been transformed into a canvas for brutality, spray-painted in red that looked too much like blood. Tigers bleed too. Your kingdom is ash. Your people are kindling. Paula Reyes remembers. Below the words, a crude drawing. A tiger with its throat cut, crown falling from its head. Daniel stared at the message, face expressionless. But Riley saw his hands tremble, saw rage building behind his eyes like a storm gathering force. Where's Paulo operating from? He asked quietly. Too quietly. We don't have confirmed. Minjun. Daniel's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. Where? Is. He. His security chief swallowed. Rumor says a warehouse near the port. Old textile facility. But Daniel, we can't just... Can't we? Daniel turned to face him fully. He burned my restaurant, killed my people, declared war on my entire empire. What exactly can't we do? Act rashly. Los Reyes will be expecting retaliation. They'll be fortified, prepared. We need intelligence, planning, strategy. We need blood. Daniel's eyes were chips of ice. And we need it now. Riley stepped forward, placed herself between Daniel and Minjun. He's right. About the trap, not the inaction. She met Daniel's gaze. Paulo wants you emotional, wants you to charge in without thinking. That's when he'll hit you hardest. So I do nothing? Let him kill more of my people while I strategize? No, you respond smart. Hit him where he's not expecting. Riley turned to Minjun. The warehouse you mentioned. What else is in that area? Docks, shipping containers. Los Reyes runs weapons through there, uses it as a distribution hub for... Minjun stopped. You want to hit his supply line. I want to cut off his resources, make him vulnerable, force him to move, to make mistakes. Riley looked back at Daniel. You want revenge? Fine, but take it cold. Make him bleed slowly instead of martyring yourself on his blade. Daniel was quiet for a long moment, wrestling with rage and reason. Finally, he nodded. What do you need? Blueprints of the Port District. Personnel files for Los Reyes' known associates. And Riley glanced at the burning restaurant. A way to make Paulo think you're devastated, broken. So he lets his guard down. Understanding flickered in Daniel's eyes. You want me to play wounded. I want you to give him a false victory. Let him think the fire worked, that you're scared. Then we hit him when he's celebrating. Riley's voice hardened. Make him understand what it means to hunt a tiger. Minjun looked between them. You're serious about this? Deadly. Riley met his gaze. I've run tactical operations against better prepared targets than Paulo Reyes. He's emotional, young, operating on revenge instead of strategy. That makes him predictable. Exploitable. Who are you? Minjun asked quietly. Someone who's very good at making people disappear. Riley turned to Daniel. But I need autonomy. Full access to your intelligence network, your contacts, your resources. No questions asked. Done. Daniel didn't hesitate. Minjun, give her whatever she needs. Full clearance. His security chief looked like he wanted to argue, then just nodded. I'll have everything sent to your secure server within the hour. Good. Daniel pulled out his phone. I'm calling a press conference. Public statement about the tragedy. Appeal for information. The usual grieving businessman routine. His voice dripped with disdain. Paulo will eat it up. Riley watched him transform. Shoulders slumping slightly. Face arranging itself into something approximating devastation. The shift was subtle but complete. The tiger becoming the wounded gazelle. You're good at this, she observed. I've been wearing masks my whole life. Daniel's eyes met hers, and for a moment the facade cracked. The question is which face is real anymore. Before Riley could respond, Minjun's phone buzzed. He answered, listened, his expression darkening. Sir, we have a problem. Your apartment in Koreatown, the one Riley was using, just exploded. Gas leak, they're saying. But nothing. Riley's voice was flat. They tried to kill me. Assumed I'd go back there. Daniel's hand found her arm, gripped tight. You're staying with me. No arguments. I wasn't planning on making any. Riley looked at the smoldering restaurant, the spray-painted threats, the bodies being loaded into ambulances. This is past the point of running. They returned to the Mercedes, Minjun trailing behind to coordinate with authorities. The drive back was silent, thick with unspoken understanding. Paulo had declared total war. There would be no negotiation, no peaceful resolution, only victory or death. Riley's apartment, her carefully constructed sanctuary of anonymity, was a crater when they drove past. Fire trucks still worked the scene. Neighbors clustered on sidewalks, filming on phones, hungry for tragedy to feed their social media appetites. She felt nothing looking at it, just the cold assessment of tactical loss. I'm sorry, Danielle said quietly. Don't be. I've lost more. Riley turned away from the window. How many properties do you own in the city? Dozens. Why? Because we need somewhere Paulo doesn't know about. Somewhere off the books. No paper trail. No digital footprint. She met his eyes. Somewhere he can't burn while we sleep. Daniel's jaw tightened. Then he made a call, spoke rapid Korean, ended it. I have a place. Malibu Cliffs. Purchased through shell corporations. Never stayed there myself. Minjun doesn't even know about it. Perfect. They changed direction, heading west toward the coast. The city gave way to highway, then winding roads that climbed into hills overlooking the Pacific. Daniel drove with one hand, the other resting near the gear shift, close enough that Riley could feel the heat of his skin without actually touching. The safe house was a modernist box of glass and concrete, cantilevered over cliffs that dropped into churning water below. Isolated, defensible, beautiful in the way dangerous things often were. Daniel killed the engine. They sat in silence, listening to waves crash against rock. We're alone now, Riley said. Not a question. Yes. Good. She opened her door, stepped out into wind that tasted like salt and violence. Because we need to talk about what happens next. And I need you to be honest about whether you're ready for it. Daniel followed her inside. The house was sparse. Expensive minimalism. Everything sharp angles and cold surfaces. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the ocean like a painting of oblivion. Riley moved through the space, checking sightlines, exit points, defensive positions, old habits. Daniel watched her with dark intensity, reading her body language the way she read terrain. "You think power makes you safe," she said, not looking at him. "It does." "No." Riley turned to face him. "It makes you a bigger target. Every empire you build, every enemy you crush, it just adds weight to the crown. And crowns are heavy, Daniel. Heavy enough to break necks. Is that what happened to you? The weight broke you?" Riley's laugh was bitter. "I was never broken. I was sharp-end, honed, turned into something so efficient at killing that my own people were afraid to decommission me." She crossed her arms. "You want to know who I am? Fine. Black Ops. Classified programs that officially don't exist. I've destabilized governments, eliminated targets in 17 countries, run operations that would make Paulo Reyes look like a street thug." Daniel's expression didn't change. And then I got tired of being a weapon, tired of watching good people die for bad reasons. So I disappeared, buried myself so deep that even my handlers couldn't find me. She met his gaze. "Until you pulled me back into the light." "I didn't pull. You chose to step into it." "Maybe." Riley moved to the window, watched darkness swallow the horizon. "Or maybe I was just tired of being invisible, of pretending I'm something I'm not." Daniel came up behind her, close enough that she could feel him in the space between heartbeats. "What are you, Riley?" "The same thing you are. A monster trying to remember what it feels like to be human." His hand found her shoulder, turned her gently. Their eyes met, and Riley saw her own exhaustion reflected back. The bone-deep weariness of people who'd survived too long on rage and necessity. "Then let's be human together," Daniel said quietly. "Just for tonight. Before the war starts again." Riley wanted to say yes. Wanted to lean into the warmth of another person, to remember what connection felt like beyond synchronized violence. But every instinct screamed warnings about vulnerability, about the cost of caring when death was always one bullet away. "I don't know how," she whispered. "Neither do I." Daniel's thumb traced her jaw with unbearable gentleness. "But I'm willing to try if you are." Thunder rumbled in the distance. Storm coming. Riley could see it building over the ocean. Dark clouds pregnant with lightning, moving toward shore with inevitable purpose. "They'll come for us," she said. "Let them. People will die. They already are." Riley closed her eyes, felt his warmth bleeding through the small space separating them. It would be so easy to close that gap, to take what he was offering, partnership, protection, maybe even something resembling peace. But peace was a lie. She'd learned that in blood and fire and the screams of people who believed they were safe right up until the moment they weren't. "You should have let them finish it," she said, opening her eyes. "That night at the restaurant. Should have let me disappear. Now you're marked by association." Daniel's hand moved from her jaw to cup her face, holding her gaze with fierce certainty. "I don't let anyone decide when my story ends. Not Paulo Reyes. Not fate. Not you." His voice dropped. "And I sure as hell wasn't going to watch you walk away without fighting for the chance to know you. Really know you. Beyond the violence and survival." Riley's breath caught. "You don't know what you're asking for." "Then show me." The words hung between them. Challenge and invitation and confession all at once. Outside, the storm broke. Rain hammered against glass like bullets. Lightning split the sky, illuminating their faces in stark white clarity. Riley made her choice. She kissed him. Not gentle or tentative, but fierce. All the fear and loneliness and desperate need for connection poured into the pressure of lips against lips. Daniel responded immediately, pulling her close, one hand tangling in her hair while the other pressed against the small of her back. They moved together like they fought, synchronized, intense, each giving and taking in equal measure. Riley's hands found his shirt, fisted in expensive fabric, pulling him closer still. Daniel groaned against her mouth, the sound vibrating through her chest. Then Riley pulled back, breathing hard, reality crashing down like the rain outside. "This is a mistake," she gasped. "Probably." Daniel's forehead rested against hers, both of them trembling. "But I'm done playing it safe. Done pretending I don't want this. Want you. We're being hunted. I know. They'll use this against us. Use me to hurt you. Let them try." His grip tightened. "I've spent 20 years being untouchable. Alone. Building walls so high nobody could reach me. And you walked through them like they were paper. Like you belonged there all along." Riley's throat tightened. "I don't belong anywhere. You belong here, with me, fighting beside me." Daniel pulled back just enough to meet her eyes. "Tell me you don't feel it. This thing between us. Tell me I'm imagining the way we fit together." She couldn't, because he was right. From that first moment in the restaurant, fighting side by side, moving like they'd trained together for years, something had clicked into place. Recognition deeper than attraction. Understanding beyond words. "I feel it," Riley admitted quietly. "And it terrifies me." "Good." Daniel smiled. "Small, genuine, devastating. Terror means you're alive. Means you still care enough to be afraid of loss." Outside, the storm raged. Inside, they stood in the eye of it. Two people learning to be human again, knowing tomorrow would bring blood and fire, but choosing this moment anyway. Riley pressed her palm against his chest, felt his heartbeat hammering beneath skin and bone. Steady, strong, real. "If we do this," she said, "if we cross this line, there's no going back. Paulo will see it as weakness. We'll use it to destroy us both. Then we'll destroy him first." Daniel covered her hand with his. Together, the words settled between them like a vow. Riley stepped back, breaking contact, needing space to think. But Daniel's phone buzzed before either could speak. He pulled it out, read the screen, and his expression turned to stone. "Minjun just sent footage from your apartment explosion." He turned the phone toward her. Security camera stills, grainy but clear enough. 3 men. Los Reyes tattoos visible on their necks. Planting devices with professional efficiency. And in the final image, one of them looking directly at the camera, smiling, holding up a photo. A photo of Riley and Daniel leaving the restaurant together. "They know," Riley breathed. "They know." Daniel pocketed the phone. "Which means the hunt just got personal. For both of us." Riley moved back to the window, watched lightning crack the sky. Her reflection stared back, hard eyes, tight mouth, the face of someone preparing for war. Behind her, Daniel's reflection joined hers. 2 silhouettes against the storm. "What now?" he asked. Riley smiled, cold, sharp, the expression of a weapon remembering its purpose. "Now we stop running, stop hiding." She turned to face him. "Now we hunt them back." Daniel's eyes gleamed with approval. Together? Together. They stood in the dark house on the cliff, rain hammering down, the Pacific churning below like an audience waiting for blood. Somewhere in the city, Paulo Reyes was celebrating, planning his next move, sharpening his knives. Let him. Riley had been a weapon far longer than he'd been alive, and now she had something worth fighting for beyond mere survival. She had a partner, a purpose, a reason to stop hiding and start burning everything that dared to threaten what mattered. The storm raged on. Inside the safe house, 2 monsters remembered what it meant to be human just long enough to choose violence together. Tomorrow, they would make Paulo Reyes regret every match he'd lit. Tonight, they planned his funeral. Rain turned the windows into rivers. Riley sat cross-legged on the floor, Daniel's laptop open before her, eyes scanning surveillance footage and intel reports with surgical focus. She'd shed her jacket, her shirt rolled to the elbows, revealing scars that mapped a history written in violence. Daniel watched her from the kitchen, pouring whiskey he wasn't drinking, just needing something to do with his hands. "Your security protocols are garbage," she said without looking up. Los Reyes knew your movements 3 days in advance. That means someone in your inner circle is feeding them real-time intelligence. I know. Daniel set down the bottle. Minjun's been running background on everyone with high-level access. So far, nothing. Then look deeper. Past the obvious. People don't usually betray for money. They betray because they believe they're doing the right thing. Ideology. Revenge. Misplaced loyalty. Riley's fingers flew across the keyboard. Who in your organization has family in Mexico? Connections to the Reyes cartel before it went to war with you? Daniel moved closer, studying the screen over her shoulder. His presence was solid, grounding. Marcus Lee. He runs my Koreatown operations. His wife is Mexican. Guadalajara family. But he's been with me for 8 years. Loyal. Reliable. 8 years is plenty of time to build cover. Riley pulled up personnel files, started cross-referencing. What happened 8 years ago? Why did you hire him? Recommendation from an associate. He needed work, had experience in logistics and distribution. Started small, worked his way up. Daniel frowned. You think he's been planning this from the beginning? Maybe. Or maybe Los Reyes got to him recently. Found leverage, threatened his family. Riley clicked through financial records. There. 3 wire transfers over the past month. 20,000 each. Routed through intermediary accounts, but sloppy enough that someone wanted you to find them eventually. That's pocket change for someone in Marcus's position. Exactly. Which means it's not about the money. Riley sat back, processing. It's a message. Paulo's showing you that loyalty is fiction, that anyone can be bought, broken, turned. He's not just attacking your empire. He's attacking your belief system. Daniel's jaw clenched. I need to bring Marcus in. No. Riley closed the laptop, turned to face him. You bring him in. Paulo knows you're onto the leak. Better to use him. Feed false information. Set a trap. Use my own man as bait. He stopped being your man when he took their money. Riley stood, stretched, felt vertebrae crack. This is war, Daniel. Sentiment gets people killed. I know what war is. His voice was sharp, defensive. I've fought more of them than you've seen birthdays. Then stop hesitating. Riley moved closer, invaded his space deliberately. You want Paulo? You want revenge for those people he burned? Then you need to think like he does. Strike where it hurts. Show no mercy. I'm not him. No, you're worse. Riley's eyes bored into his. Because you have the capacity for mercy and you choose violence anyway. That makes you more dangerous than any thug operating on pure rage. Daniel stared at her, something shifting in his expression. Is that what you tell yourself? To justify what you've done? I don't justify anything. I just survive. Riley turned away, moved to the window. The storm had intensified. Waves hammering the cliffs, wind howling like grief. You wanted to know who I am? Fine. I'm the woman who executed a politician in front of his children because those were my orders. I'm the soldier who burned an entire village to smoke out one target. I'm the weapon that worked so well they couldn't retire me. They had to bury me. Silence filled the space between them. And now? Daniel asked quietly. Now I'm trying to figure out if I'm still that person. Or if I've been playing human so long I've forgotten how to be the monster. Riley pressed her palm against the glass. Felt cold bleeding through. You make it complicated. How? Because you see me. Not the mask. Not the ghost. Me. She didn't turn around. And when someone sees you, really sees you, it's harder to hide. Harder to pretend you're empty inside. Daniel moved behind her, close enough that his breath stirred her hair. Maybe you're not empty. Maybe you're just tired of carrying everything alone. Riley's reflection in the glass showed exhaustion she usually hid. Aren't you? Yes. His hand found her shoulder, gentle pressure. Which is why I'm grateful you're here. Even if it's dangerous. Even if it costs me everything. It will cost you everything. Riley turned to face him. That's what Paulo wants. To strip you down. Destroy your empire. Leave you with nothing. Then let him take everything else. Daniel's hand moved from her shoulder to her face, cradling her jaw. As long as I keep this moment, this choice, you, Riley's breath caught. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you move through violence like poetry. I know you scan exits even in safe spaces, because nowhere feels safe. I know you hide because being seen means being vulnerable, and vulnerability means death. His thumb traced her cheekbone. I know what it's like to be exactly that kind of broken. She should pull away, maintain distance. Professional boundaries were the only thing keeping them both alive. But Daniel's touch was warm and his eyes held something that looked like understanding. And Riley was so desperately tired of being alone. Tell me, she whispered. About Busan. About whatever made you into this. Daniel's expression shuddered for a moment. Then he stepped back, gave her space, and began. My father was a fisherman. Honest work, honest life. But Busan isn't kind to honest people. The gangs controlled the docks. Protection money, smuggling routes, violence as commerce. He refused to pay. Said he'd rather starve than feed the beasts. Daniel moved to the whiskey, finally poured himself a glass. So they made an example, burned his boat, beat him in front of our entire neighborhood, showed everyone what happened when you said no. Riley listened, perfectly still. I was 15, watching my father bleed on the dock while men laughed. And I understood something fundamental in that moment. Daniel drank, set the glass down with controlled precision. Power isn't given, it's taken. And the only way to protect what you love is to become more dangerous than anything that threatens it. So you joined them. No, I destroyed them. Daniel's eyes were distant, seeing a past stained in red. Took me 3 years. I learned their operations, their weaknesses, their hierarchy. Made myself useful, indispensable. Got close enough to their leadership that they trusted me with their secrets. He smiled. Cold, terrible. Then I burned it all down. Every warehouse, every safe house, every connection they had, left them exposed for their rivals to devour. And your father? He died 6 months after the beating. Injuries he never recovered from. Never knew what I'd become to avenge him. Daniel's voice cracked slightly. Maybe that's mercy. Maybe he would have hated what I turned into. Riley crossed the room, stood beside him. Or maybe he would have understood that sometimes love looks like destruction. Is that what this is? Daniel met her eyes. Destruction disguised as something better? I don't know yet. Riley took the whiskey glass from his hand, drank what remained. It burned beautifully. But I know Paulo doesn't get to decide how this story ends. We do. Thunder cracked so loud the windows rattled. Lightning illuminated them in stark white. 2 figures standing in darkness, surrounded by glass and storm. Daniel reached out slowly, giving her time to retreat, and pulled her close. Not sexual, just contact. Just the warmth of another person who understood what it meant to carry death on your skin. Riley let herself lean into him. Felt his heartbeat against her cheek, steady and strong. Felt something inside her chest crack open just enough to hurt. I'm going to get you killed, she whispered against his shirt. Then at least I'll die for something real. His arms tightened around her. Better than slowly suffocating under the weight of empire I built from corpses. They stood like that as the storm raged, holding each other not from desire but from desperate need for connection. For proof that they were more than the violence they carried. Riley felt his breath in her hair, his hands steady on her back, and for one impossible moment she let herself imagine safety, home, peace. Then her phone buzzed. She pulled it out, read the message, and felt ice replace whatever warmth had been building. What? Daniel asked, sensing the shift. Minjun just sent surveillance from the port. Los Reyes is moving tonight. Weapons shipment coming in, heavy security. If we hit them now, we'd be walking into a trap. Or an opportunity. Riley showed him the screen. Heat signatures, guard rotations, blind spots in their coverage. They're expecting you to be grieving, wounded, not strategizing with someone who can read tactical deployments in her sleep. Daniel studied the footage, and Riley watched him transform. The vulnerable man disappeared. What remained was the tiger, calculating, predatory, Ruthless. We'd need a team, equipment, extraction routes if it goes sideways. I can handle logistics. You focus on positioning. Your people trust you. We use that. Make them believe this is about mourning the losses, about striking back emotionally. Riley pulled up blueprints on her phone. But really, we're surgical, fast, gone before they even register what hit them. And Marcus? We use him exactly as planned. Feed him information about a different target tonight. Let him pass it to Paulo. While Los Reyes is defending the wrong location, we hit them where they're actually vulnerable. Daniel smiled, dark, approving. You're terrifying when you strategize. You have no idea. Riley moved to grab her jacket. We need to move now. Gather your most trusted people. Not Marcus. Not anyone in his immediate orbit. People who've bled for you. People who'll follow you into hell. That's a short list. Good. Makes it easier to keep secrets. They worked through the night. Calls made in hushed tones. Resources moved. Weapons checked and rechecked. Riley coordinated like she'd been born to it. Every action precise and purposeful. Daniel watched her transform from the woman who'd trembled in his arms to the operative who'd destabilized governments, and felt something that might have been love but looked more like inevitability. By dawn, they had a plan. Dangerous. Aggressive. Exactly the kind of move Paulo wouldn't expect from a supposedly broken adversary. Riley stood at the window as first light painted the ocean in shades of blood and gold. Daniel came up behind her, wrapped his arms around her waist, pressed a kiss to her shoulder. After this, he said quietly, after we burn Los Reyes to ash. What then? I don't know. Riley covered his hands with hers. I've never thought past survival. Never planned for a future that might actually exist. Then let's make one. Daniel turned her to face him. Not built on violence, not held together by shared trauma. Something real. Riley looked up at him, at eyes that held impossible hope, despite everything he'd seen, everything he'd done. You're asking for a fairy tale. I'm asking for a chance. The words settled between them like a promise neither was sure they could keep. If we survive tonight, Riley said, ask me again. Deal. Daniel kissed her. Soft, brief, tasting of coffee and desperate optimism. They pulled apart, checked weapons, reviewed the plan one final time. Then they drove into the city as dawn broke over Los Angeles, painting everything in shades of fire. Tonight, they would make Paulo Reyes remember what it meant to hunt tigers. Tonight, monsters would remind the world why humans should fear the dark. The port district smelled like rust and broken promises. Riley moved through shadows, Daniel 3 steps behind, both of them armed and silent as death. The rest of the team, 6 of Daniel's most trusted operatives, spread out across the complex, covering exits and angles of attack. The intelligence had been perfect. Almost too perfect. Los Reyes' shipment was exactly where Minjun's surveillance had indicated, guarded by a skeleton crew that suggested arrogance or distraction. Riley's instincts screamed trap. Hold, she whispered into her comm. The team froze. Something's wrong. Where's the heavy security? The reinforcements? Daniel's voice crackled in her ear. You think they made us? I think we're not the only ones playing games tonight. Riley scanned the containers, the loading cranes, the dark spaces between massive steel boxes. Pull back. Regroup at the... Gunfire erupted from 3 directions at once. Riley dove behind a container as bullets sparked off metal. Her team returned fire, muzzle flashes illuminating the night, shouts in Spanish and Korean. Los Reyes hadn't come alone. They'd brought an army. Ambush! Someone yelled into the comm. They were waiting. The voice cut off, body hitting concrete. Riley's combat instincts took over. She moved fluid and fast, using the container maze for cover, picking off targets with brutal efficiency. Headshots, center mass, no wasted ammunition. The weapon in her hand was just an extension of her body. Decades of training reducing violence to muscle memory. Daniel fought like a demon 10 meters away. Close quarters, hand to hand when enemies got too near, using every dirty trick that had kept him alive this long. Riley caught glimpses of him between containers. breaking bones, stealing weapons, moving with lethal grace. They'd trained separately for the same war, but Los Reyes had numbers, and they'd known exactly where Daniel's team would be. "Fall back," Daniel ordered into the comm. "Get to the extraction point." "Sir, we're cut off." Another voice. Panicked. "They've got the north exit blocked." Explosion. The comm filled with static and screaming. Riley's blood turned cold. This wasn't an ambush. This was extermination. Paulo had known they were coming, had prepared to wipe out Daniel's entire inner circle in one night, which meant the leak was worse than they'd thought. "Daniel," Riley shouted over the gunfire. "Marcus didn't betray you. Minjun did." Silence on the comm. Then Daniel's voice, low and deadly. "Explain." The intel was too good, the timing too perfect. Minjun's the only one who knew our exact plan tonight, who knew where we'd be and when. Riley dropped another enemy, reloaded without looking. "He's been playing you from the beginning. Probably from before Los Reyes even started this war." More gunfire. Closer now. They were being herded toward the water, toward a kill zone with no cover and nowhere to run. "Where are you?" Daniel demanded. "Container row 7. You?" 5. Pinned down. 3 hostiles between us. Riley assessed the layout, calculated angles and probabilities. "I'm coming to you. 60 seconds. Cover your 6. "Riley, don't." But she was already moving. Fast, low, using darkness and chaos for camouflage. She killed 2 men without slowing, wounded a third, reached Daniel's position as he put down the last hostile pressing him. Their eyes met across the darkness. No words needed. They moved together, backs to each other. A 2-person killing machine that cut through Los Reyes' forces like a blade through silk. But there were too many. And the team, Daniel's loyal people, were dying. Riley could hear it over the comm. Screams cut short. Final gasps. The wet sounds of bodies hitting concrete. "We need to get out," Riley said, dropping an enemy who'd rounded the container too fast. "Regroup. Live to fight another day. I'm not leaving my people." "Your people are already dead." Riley grabbed his arm, forced him to meet her eyes. "This is a slaughter. If we stay, we die too. And then Paulo wins everything." Daniel's face twisted with rage and grief, but he was pragmatic enough to recognize truth when it tried to save his life. "Extraction point Beta," he said into the comm. "Anyone still alive, get there now." Silence answered. Then static, then nothing. They ran through the container maze, Los Reyes forces converging behind them. Riley threw a flash grenade, bought them seconds. Daniel returned, suppressing fire, keeping pursuers at distance. They moved with synchronized precision, covering each other, anticipating movements, fighting like they'd been doing this together for years instead of days. The extraction point was a dock jutting into black water. A speedboat waited. Insurance Riley had insisted on. A backup plan nobody else knew about. They were 20 meters away when Riley felt the impact. Not pain at first, just force. Her leg buckled. She went down hard, weapon skittering across concrete. "Riley," Daniel's voice, raw with something that sounded like fear. She looked down. Blood spreading across her thigh, dark and fast. Arterial hit. Maybe femoral. Bad. Potentially fatal if not treated immediately. "Go," she gasped. "Get to the boat." "Fuck that." Daniel was already there, scooping her up with terrifying strength, running toward the dock while bullets sparked around them. Riley tried to protest, but the pain was catching up now. White-hot and all-consuming. She pressed her hand against the wound, felt blood pulse between her fingers. Too much blood. Too fast. Daniel reached the boat, laid her down with surprising gentleness given the circumstances. His hands found her thigh, pressed hard against the wound. Riley screamed. I know," he muttered, ripping his shirt to make a tourniquet. "Stay with me, Riley. Stay awake. Kind of hard when I'm bleeding out," she managed through gritted teeth. "Then bleed slower." Daniel tied off the tourniquet with brutal efficiency, cinching it tight enough to make her vision white out. "We're getting you to a hospital." "No hospitals. They'll find us." Riley grabbed his wrist. "Your penthouse. You have medical supplies there?" "Some. Not enough for this." "Then it'll have to be enough." She tried to sit up, failed, collapsed back. "Daniel, listen. Minjun." "I know." His voice was granite. "I'll deal with him. After I make sure you don't die on me." "Always so romantic," Riley whispered, then passed out. She woke to pain and motion. Daniel, driving like the devil himself, was chasing them, weaving through empty pre-dawn streets. Riley's leg was on fire. Everything was on fire. "Still alive?" Daniel asked, without taking his eyes off the road. "Debatable." Riley looked down at her thigh. The tourniquet had slowed the bleeding, but blood still seeped through the makeshift bandage. "How bad?" "You'll live. Assuming we get you somewhere I can actually treat this in the next 10 minutes. Your bedside manner needs work." Despite everything, Daniel laughed. Short, sharp, slightly unhinged. "You got shot protecting me." "Again. That's becoming a dangerous pattern. Someone has to keep you alive." Riley closed her eyes against a wave of nausea. "How many did we lose?" The silence stretched too long. "Daniel?" "All of them." His voice was hollow. 6 good people. Dead because I walked them into a trap. Because Minjun betrayed you. I trusted him. 10 years, Riley. A decade of loyalty, or what I thought was loyalty. And he sold me out for what? Money? Paulo's promises? Riley forced herself to focus through the pain. Doesn't matter why. What matters is, he's still out there. Still feeding intel to Los Reyes. Still dangerous. Not for long. Daniel's hands tightened on the wheel. When I'm done with him, Paulo will find pieces scattered across the city. They reached the penthouse. Daniel carried her inside, ignoring her protests that she could walk. He laid her on the dining table. Imported marble. Obscenely expensive. Now about to be covered in blood. "This is going to hurt," he warned, pulling out a medical kit that looked military grade. "Everything hurts. Just do it." Daniel cut away her pants, exposing the wound. Entry point high on her outer thigh. No exit wound. Bullet still inside. His jaw clenched. "I need to extract it. You need a hospital for this." "No hospitals." Riley's voice was firm despite the shaking. "You've done this before. I can see it in how you're assessing the damage. That was a lifetime ago. Different context. Same principles. Sterilize. Extract. Suture. I'll walk you through it if you..." Her words cut off in a scream as Daniel poured antiseptic over the wound. "Sorry," he said, not sounding sorry. "There's no gentle way to do this." He worked with grim efficiency. Local anesthetic that barely touched the pain. Surgical tools that looked too clean to have ever been used. Hands that were steady despite the rage Riley could see building behind his eyes. The extraction took 20 minutes that felt like hours. Riley bit down on a leather belt, tears streaming, while Daniel dug through muscle and tissue to find the bullet. When he finally pulled it free. Deformed copper and lead. She nearly passed out again. "Done," Daniel said quietly. "Now the stitches." Riley watched the ceiling, felt every pierce of the needle through her skin, and tried not to think about how many of Daniel's people had died tonight. How many families would wake to news that their loved ones weren't coming home? How many deaths carried her fingerprints because she'd believed they could outmaneuver Paulo Reyes? "This is my fault," she whispered. "No," Daniel's voice was firm. "This is Minjun's fault, and Paulo's, and mine for not seeing the betrayal sooner." He tied off the final suture. "But mostly it's a reminder that we're fighting people who don't care about rules or honor, who'll burn everything we love just to watch us suffer." Riley sat up slowly, testing the leg. Pain screamed, but the bleeding had stopped. "Where is he? Minjun?" "I don't know. He went dark after the ambush." Daniel cleaned the blood off his hands, methodical and cold. "But I'll find him. And when I do..." His phone buzzed. He pulled it out, read the message, and his face went absolutely blank. "What?" Riley asked. "It's from Minjun." Daniel turned the screen toward her. "You should have stayed in Busan. The tiger belongs in a cage. Check your penthouse security footage from 2 hours ago. Riley's stomach dropped. Daniel pulled up the feed, scrubbed backward, and they watched in silent horror. Min-jun entering the penthouse with a keycard he shouldn't have. Moving through rooms with familiar ease. Planting devices. Small, professional, barely visible. Cameras. Listening equipment. Worse. He's been watching us, Daniel breathed. Everything. Every conversation. He didn't finish. Didn't need to. The implications were clear and devastating. How long? Riley asked. Since the beginning. Maybe longer. Daniel's hands shook with rage. He knew about you. About us. Fed it all to Paulo. Made us think we were hunting them when really they were studying us. Riley slid off the table, tested weight on her injured leg. It held, barely. Then he knows we're here. Knows we survived. Yes. Which means Los Reyes is coming. Probably already on their way. Daniel moved to the window, looked out at the city beginning to wake. Let them come. I'm done running. Done hiding. Done playing their game by their rules. Daniel. No. He turned to face her. They killed my people. Shot you. Violated my home. Made me doubt everything I've built. His voice dropped to barely above a whisper. I'm going to burn Paulo Reyes alive. I'm going to make Min-jun watch. And then I'm going to show this entire city what happens when you hunt tigers. Riley saw it in his eyes. The death of restraint. The birth of something darker, more primal. The businessman evaporating, leaving only the monster underneath. If you go down that road, she said quietly, there's no coming back. I know. You'll lose yourself. Maybe. Daniel crossed to her, cupped her face with hands still stained with her blood. But I'll have vengeance, and I'll have kept you alive. That's enough. Riley searched his face, saw the man she'd been falling for disappearing beneath rage and grief. She should stop him, should pull him back from the edge. Instead, she kissed him. Hard, desperate, tasting like blood and resignation. Then we do it together, she said against his lips. We burn everything, leave nothing standing, make them regret every breath they've taken since this started. Daniel's arms tightened around her. You should run, disappear. Let me handle this. I'm done running. Riley pulled back, met his eyes. You said we were partners. Equal risk. That means I stand with you until the end. Whatever that looks like. Even if the end is fire? Especially if the end is fire. She smiled, cold and terrible and absolutely certain. I've been burned before. This time I'm controlling the flame. Dawn broke over Los Angeles. Somewhere in the city, Min-jun was laughing. Paulo Reyes was planning. And two people who'd tried very hard to be human remembered why monsters survived when heroes didn't. Daniel's phone buzzed again. Another message from Min-jun. Rooftop, midnight. Come alone or she dies screaming. Below it, a photo. Riley's old apartment, the one that had exploded. And standing in front of the rubble, a young woman. Early 20s, beautiful, terrified. Riley's blood turned to ice. Who is that? I don't know. Liar. Riley grabbed his phone, zoomed in on the photo. The woman's face was familiar in ways that made her chest ache. Daniel. Who is she? His expression cracked. My sister. Half-sister. From my father's second marriage. I sent her to America for school. Kept her away from this life. Min-jun is one of the only people who knew about her. His voice broke. I thought I was protecting her. I thought if I kept her secret, he's going to kill her. Riley handed back the phone. Unless you give him what he wants. Which is what? My life? My empire? You. Riley's mind raced, calculating options and probabilities. He wants you broken. Wants you to choose between vengeance and family. To force you into sacrificing everything for someone you love. Then he's already won. Daniel sank into a chair, suddenly looking decades older. Because I can't let her die. She's innocent. He pressed his hands against his face. She's the only family I have left. Riley limped to him, placed her hand on his shoulder. Then we don't go alone. We don't play his game. We make our own rules. He said, "Come alone." He said a lot of things. Most of them were lies. Riley's voice hardened. You want to save your sister? Fine. But we do it smart, tactical, using everything I know about hostage extraction and everything you know about Minjun's psychology. Daniel looked up at her. What are you suggesting? That we stop reacting and start acting. That we give Paulo and Minjun exactly what they want. Riley smiled, sharp and dangerous. Until the moment we give them what they deserve instead. Outside, the city woke to another beautiful day. Inside, 2 people planned murder dressed as rescue. Midnight was 12 hours away. Riley intended to spend every second making sure Minjun regretted learning her name. Riley spent the day transforming Daniel's penthouse into a war room. Weapons laid out with surgical precision. Maps marked with approach vectors. Every contingency planned for. Every variable accounted for. Her wounded leg screamed with each movement, but she ignored it. Pain was just information. Death was the only thing that mattered. Daniel made calls. Quiet, coded conversations with people Riley didn't ask about. Resources being moved. Favors being called in. The infrastructure of Empire being repurposed for a single desperate extraction. They didn't talk about what would happen if they failed. Some futures were too dark to speak into existence. By evening, Riley had modified her tactical vest to accommodate the leg wound, armed herself with enough firepower to start a small war, and run through the plan 17 times in her head. Daniel found her on the balcony, watching the sun sink into the Pacific like a drowning god. You should eat something, he said, standing beside her. Can't. Need to stay light. Mobile. Food slows reflexes. Riley, I know what I'm doing. She didn't look at him. I've run operations like this in 12 countries. Extracted assets from worse situations. Minjun thinks he's smart, but he's emotional. That makes him predictable. And if you're wrong? Finally, Riley turned to face him. Then your sister dies. We probably die. And Paulo Reyes wins everything. Daniel's jaw tightened. Inspiring. I don't do inspiration. I do probability and violence. Riley softened slightly. But if you're asking if I think we can pull this off, yes. Barely. With luck we don't deserve and timing that would make Clockwork jealous. That's not particularly reassuring. Good. Confidence gets people killed. She reached out, traced the line of his jaw. Healthy fear keeps you sharp. Daniel caught her hand, pressed a kiss to her palm. I meant what I said earlier. About after. About making something real. Daniel. I know. Terrible timing. But if tonight goes sideways, I need you to know. He took a breath. You're the first person in 20 years who's made me want something beyond revenge and survival. Who's made me remember what it feels like to be human instead of just wearing the costume. Riley's throat tightened. You're romanticizing trauma bonding. No. I'm telling you the truth before we walk into hell. His hand moved to her face, holding her gaze. I see you, Riley Clayton. Whoever you really are beneath all the names and identities. I see the woman who fights like war is worship and hides because being seen means death. I see someone as broken as I am, trying just as hard to put the pieces back together. Broken things don't heal. They just learn to live with the cracks. Then let's be broken together. Daniel's forehead touched hers. Let's survive tonight and build something from the wreckage. Something that doesn't require blood to sustain it. Riley closed her eyes, felt his breath on her skin, and let herself imagine it. A life beyond violence. Mornings that didn't start with threat assessment. Nights that ended in peace instead of nightmares. It was the most dangerous fantasy she'd ever entertained. If we survive, she whispered, ask me again. I will. Every day until you believe it. They stood like that as darkness swallowed the city. 2 people about to gamble everything on a plan that relied more on desperation than strategy. Riley's phone alarm chimed. 11 o'clock, 1 hour until midnight. Time to move, she said, pulling away. They geared up in silence. Checking weapons, securing equipment, performing the rituals of people who'd done this too many times before. Riley strapped a knife to her uninjured thigh, another to her ankle. Daniel loaded magazines with methodical precision, each click of ammunition a promise of violence. At 11:30, they left the penthouse, took the service elevator down to the garage. Daniel's motorcycle waited, fast, agile, perfect for the kind of extraction that required speed over armor. Riley climbed on behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist, felt his heartbeat through his jacket. Steady, determined. "Last chance to walk away," Daniel said. "And miss all the fun?" Riley's voice was light, but her grip tightened. "Drive." They shot into Los Angeles night, weaving through traffic with controlled aggression. The rendezvous point was across town, a half-finished building, construction halted by litigation, now just a skeleton of concrete and ambition reaching toward uncaring stars. Perfect for an ambush. They arrived at 11:50. Daniel killed the engine 2 blocks away. They approached on foot, using darkness and parked cars for cover. Riley's leg protested every step, but adrenaline was better than any painkiller. The building loomed above them, 30 floors of exposed rebar and empty windows. Riley scanned the structure, mapping positions and sight lines. "Rooftop," she murmured. "He'll have her there. Maximum exposure. Hard to approach without being seen. He wants me vulnerable, emotional, so we give him that." Riley met Daniel's eyes. "You go up alone. Visible. Hands empty. Exactly what he demanded. And you?" "I go up the hard way. Climb the exterior. Come in from behind while he's focused on you." Riley pulled out a compact grappling system, borrowed from contacts she didn't explain. "When I signal, you drop. I handle the rest." "That's not a plan. That's barely a prayer. Welcome to tactical operations." Riley checked her weapons one final time. "Trust me?" Daniel looked at her. Really looked. Like he was memorizing every detail in case it was the last time. "With my life. With everything. Then let's go save your sister and kill a traitor." They split up. Daniel entered through the main construction entrance, hands raised, playing the defeated billionaire. Riley circled the building, found a structural column, and began to climb. The ascent was brutal. Every pull aggravated her wounded leg. Cold wind bit through tactical gear, but Riley had climbed worse surfaces and worse conditions. Pain was just noise. The mission was everything. She reached the 20th floor, pulled herself onto an exposed beam, caught her breath. 15 seconds. Then kept climbing. Below, she could hear Daniel's voice echoing through the skeletal structure. Talking to someone. Minjun, probably. Words she couldn't make out, but tones she recognized. Negotiation masquerading as surrender. 25th floor. Her arms screamed. Blood seeped through the bandage on her thigh. Riley ignored both, focused on the next handhold, the next pull. 30th floor. The roof. Riley hauled herself over the edge, rolled into shadow, drew her weapon. The scene before her was exactly what she'd expected, and somehow worse. Minjun stood at the roof's edge, Daniel's sister kneeling before him, hands bound, mouth gagged. 2 other men, Los Reyes soldiers, flanked him, weapons trained on Daniel as he stood 20 feet away. Hands still raised, face carefully blank. "I came alone," Daniel was saying. "Like you demanded. Now let her go." Minjun laughed, bitter, triumphant. "You think I'm stupid? That I'd believe the great Daniel Kang would actually surrender? I'm here, aren't I?" "You're here, but where's your little operative? The ghost who can't stop saving you?" Minjun's eyes scanned the shadows. "Riley Clayton. Or whoever she really is." Riley stayed perfectly still, waiting, assessing angles. "She's gone," Daniel said. "Left the city after the port. Said this wasn't her fight." "Liar." Minjun pressed his gun against the girl's head. She whimpered behind the gag. "You've been broadcasting from your penthouse all day. Planning, preparing. I heard everything." "Fuck." Riley's mind raced. He'd left the listening devices active. Wanted them to know he was listening. The trap wasn't just physical. It was psychological. "Then you know I'm done," Daniel said quietly. "You've won. You and Paulo. My empire is ash. My people are dead. All I want is my sister. Let her go, and I'll give you whatever you want. What I want," Minjun's voice cracked with emotion, "is for you to understand what it's like to lose everything. To have the thing you love most destroyed while you watch helplessly." "Why?" Daniel's mask cracked. 10 years, Minjun. A decade of loyalty. What did I do to deserve this? You killed my brother. Minjun's gun hand trembled. 5 years ago, the Busan consolidation. You had rivals eliminated. Loose ends tied up. My brother was one of those ends. 23 years old. Just graduated university. Worked as an accountant for one of your competitors. Innocent. Daniel's face went pale. "I didn't know. You didn't care." Minjun's composure shattered. He was collateral damage, a name on a list. You signed the order without even reading it, and I've spent 5 years getting close to you, earning your trust, waiting for the perfect moment to take everything you love. Riley's finger tightened on the trigger. Clean shot, 40 feet, strong crosswind, 90% probability of kill. But the moment she fired, the Los Reyes soldiers would open up on Daniel, maybe hit the girl. Unacceptable risk. She needed a better angle, needed them distracted. Daniel must have reached the same conclusion because he took a step forward, drawing focus. "Minjun, listen to me. I'm sorry. If I'd known." "Sorry doesn't resurrect the dead." Minjun's voice echoed across the rooftop. "Sorry doesn't give me back my brother. Doesn't erase the moment I had to tell my mother her son was gone. That he died for your ambition. You're right." Daniel's voice broke with genuine emotion. "You're absolutely right. I've taken so much, destroyed so much. All in the name of building an empire I told myself mattered. But it doesn't. None of it does compared to..." He looked at his sister. "To family, to the people we love." Riley used the moment. Moved 3 steps closer. Better angle now. 70% kill shot on Minjun. But still too risky with the girl so close. "I can't give you your brother back," Daniel continued. "But I can give you my life. Let her go. Take me instead. End this however you need to." "Daniel, no." His sister's muffled protest. Touching. Minjun's gun pressed harder against her temple. "But insufficient. I don't just want you dead. I want you destroyed. I want you to live knowing you couldn't save her. That your empire, your power, your precious control, all of it was worthless when it mattered most." His finger moved to the trigger. Riley didn't think. Just moved. She burst from shadow, crossing the distance in 4 seconds, weapon up, shouting, "Down!" Daniel dropped instantly. Riley fired twice, both Los Reyes soldiers down before they could react. But Minjun was faster than she expected, weapon swinging toward her even as he used the girl as a shield. Riley adjusted mid-motion, couldn't take the shot without risking the hostage, so she did the only thing possible. She threw herself into Minjun, full-body tackle, knocking them both toward the roof's edge. They went over together. Riley felt weightlessness, saw Daniel's face. Horror and understanding. Felt Minjun's hand tangled in her tactical vest, dragging her down with him. Then her grappling line snapped taut. She'd hooked it on a scent, insurance she'd hoped not to need. It caught her 10 feet below the roof's edge, arresting the fall with brutal force that drove air from her lungs. Minjun wasn't so lucky. His scream cut off abruptly as he hit the ground 30 floors below. Riley hung in darkness, spinning slowly, lungs burning, wounded leg screaming. She heard Daniel above, shouting her name, then hands grabbing her vest, hauling her back onto the roof. She collapsed on concrete, gasping, everything hurting. "You insane, brilliant." Daniel pulled her close, checking for injuries. "Are you hurt?" "Riley, talk to me." "I'm fine," she managed. "Your sister." "Safe. Unconscious but safe. Minjun must have drugged her." Daniel's hands shook as they moved over her body, confirming she was intact. "You could have died. That was the stupidest, most reckless. It worked, didn't it? Despite everything." Daniel laughed. Half sob, half relief. "Yeah, it worked." Riley sat up slowly, testing limbs. Everything functional. The leg wound had reopened. She could feel blood spreading, but nothing fatal. Just another scar to add to the collection. "We need to move," she said. Minjun might have called for backup before. "Already handled." Daniel helped her stand. "I had people staging nearby, just in case. They're sweeping the building now." "Of course he did." Riley smiled despite the pain. "You didn't trust me?" "I trusted you completely. But I'm not an idiot." Daniel looked at her. Really looked. And Riley saw something in his expression that made her chest ache. "You were going to sacrifice yourself. If it came down to choosing between me and my sister, you were ready to die so we both lived. That's the job." "No." His hand found her face. "That's love disguised as duty, and I'm done pretending I don't see the difference." Riley wanted to argue, to explain that it was just strategy, just tactical priority. But the words wouldn't come, because maybe he was right. Maybe somewhere between the violence and survival, she'd started caring about more than just the mission. "Daniel." He kissed her, right there on the rooftop, surrounded by unconscious enemies and the distant sound of sirens. Kissed her like she was oxygen and he was drowning. Riley kissed him back. Tasted blood and desperation and impossible hope. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Daniel pressed his forehead to hers. "After this," he whispered. "After we deal with Paulo. After we burn everything that needs burning. I want." "I know." Riley's voice was soft. "Me too." His sister groaned, consciousness returning. Daniel moved to her side, checking her vitals, untying her bonds. She blinked up at him with eyes that were his but younger, more innocent. "Appa," she whispered in Korean. "I'm here. You're safe." "The man," he said. Her voice cracked. "He said you killed people, that you were a monster." Daniel's expression shuddered. Riley saw him calculating what to say, how much truth to reveal. "He was right," Daniel said finally. "I have killed people. I've done terrible things, built an empire from violence and fear. I am." He took a breath. "I am exactly the monster he said I was." His sister stared at him, processing. "But I'm also your brother. And I will burn this entire city to ash before I let anyone hurt you again." He helped her stand. "Can you live with that? With knowing what I am?" She looked at him for a long moment. Then at Riley, standing bloodied and armed in the shadows. Then back at Daniel. "You came for me," she said quietly. "When you could have walked away, could have let me die to protect yourself. You came, always." She hugged him then, fierce and desperate. Daniel held her, and Riley saw his face crack with emotion he'd been holding back. Family. The thing that made monsters human. The thing worth dying for. Riley turned away, giving them privacy, and looked out at Los Angeles spreading below like a map of possibilities. The city glittered, indifferent to violence and rescue. Just another night in a place where people fought and bled and hoped for dawn. Her phone buzzed. Message from an unknown number. Minjun was just the opening move. "Your turn, Clayton." Paulo Reyes. Riley smiled, cold and certain. "Good," she whispered to the city. "I was hoping you'd make this personal." Behind her, Daniel finished with his sister, called his backup team to extract her somewhere safe. Then he stood beside Riley, looking at the same city, seeing the same war. "It's not over, is it?" he asked. "No. This was just the betrayal. Now comes the real fight." Riley met his eyes. "Paulo knows we survived, knows we're coming. He'll fortify, prepare, make the final confrontation as brutal as possible." "Good." Daniel's voice was granite. "I want him ready. Want him to understand exactly who's hunting him. What kind of monsters live in the shadows he thought he controlled." They stood together as night deepened. Two people who'd tried very hard to be civilized, remembering why civilization was just a thin veneer over sharpened teeth. Tomorrow, they would finish this. Would burn Paulo Reyes and Los Reyes cartel to ash. Tonight, they allowed themselves one moment of peace. Standing on a rooftop above a city that ate people alive, holding each other like anchors against the storm. You think power makes you safe, Riley had said once. Daniel had learned the truth. Power didn't make you safe. It just made the target on your back bigger, brighter, impossible to miss. But maybe, with the right person beside you, it made you dangerous enough that the monsters hunting you thought twice before attacking. Maybe that was enough. The storm was coming, but for one perfect moment, they pretended they couldn't hear the thunder. The warehouse district smelled like gasoline and broken promises. Riley stood in shadow across from Los Reyes' headquarters, a converted textile factory that now served as Paulo's throne room. 3 weeks since the rooftop. 3 weeks of planning, gathering intelligence, watching Paulo fortify his position like a king preparing for siege. Tonight, the siege began. Thermal shows 43 bodies inside, Riley murmured into her comm. Heavy concentration on the second floor. That's where he'll be. Daniel's voice crackled in her ear. Entry points? 4 confirmed. Loading dock south side. 2 guards, rotating patrol. Roof access northwest corner. Unsecured but exposed. Front entrance. Suicide. And the old underground steam tunnels from when this was industrial district. The tunnels. The tunnels, Riley confirmed. She turned to look at Daniel, standing 10 feet away, dressed in black tactical gear that made him look more soldier than billionaire. You're sure about this? Once we go in, there's no walking it back. This becomes war. Total, final. It's been war since he burned my restaurant. Daniel checked his weapon. Practiced, efficient. I'm just finished pretending otherwise. Riley nodded. Around them, Daniel's remaining forces staged in darkness. 20 people. Professionals. Ex-military, ex-police. The kind of individuals who understood violence as currency. Not enough to match Los Reyes' numbers, but enough if they were smart, brutal, and willing to die for the cause. Everyone clear on objectives? Riley asked into the comm. A chorus of affirmatives. Good. We move in 3 minutes. Remember, this isn't about killing everyone. It's about reaching Paulo. Everything else is obstacle removal. She cut the connection, turned to Daniel. Last chance. We can still call this off. Disappear. Let Paulo think he won. And live looking over our shoulders forever? Daniel's jaw set. No, this ends tonight, one way or another. That's what I'm afraid of. Riley touched his arm. If something goes wrong, if I go down, you get out. Don't play hero. Don't martyr yourself. Just survive. Funny. Daniel's hand covered hers. I was about to say the same thing to you. They looked at each other, and Riley saw everything they'd never said out loud reflected in his eyes. Affection, understanding. The kind of connection that came from shared trauma and synchronized violence. If we survive this, Daniel started. When we survive this, Riley managed to smile. Positive thinking. When we survive this, Daniel amended. I'm taking you somewhere quiet. Somewhere without fire or bullets or people trying to kill us. And I'm asking you properly. About after. About us. About building something that doesn't require blood. That's a hell of a first date. We're a hell of a couple. Riley laughed despite everything. Yeah, we are. The timer on her watch hit 0. Time, she said quietly. Let's go burn down an empire. They moved as one unit, flowing through darkness toward the steam tunnel entrance. Riley led. She knew these systems, had studied them obsessively. The tunnels were tight, claustrophobic, lined with pipes that dripped condensation like sweat. Perfect infiltration route. Perfect death trap if Los Reyes discovered them. They moved in silence, single file, weapons up. Riley's wounded leg protested every step, but she'd wrapped it tight, loaded up on painkillers she'd regret later. Later didn't matter. Only forward motion mattered. The tunnel opened into the warehouse basement. Riley raised a fist. Halt. Listened. Voices above. Footsteps. Guard rotation. She checked her watch. 30 seconds until they moved past this section. 30 seconds of exposure. They waited. Time stretched like taffy. Riley counted heartbeats. matched breathing to the rhythm of patrol boots overhead. The footsteps faded. "Move," Riley whispered. They climbed stairs, entered the main warehouse floor. Containers stacked like metal coffins, shadows thick enough to hide armies. Riley scanned the space, mapping threats and routes. Daniel moved beside her, rifle up, covering angles she couldn't see. This was what they'd become. Two halves of one lethal whole. Gunfire erupted from the south side. The distraction team, hitting the loading dock exactly on schedule. Los Reyes forces converged on the noise, shouting orders in Spanish and Korean. Weapons raised. "Go," Riley ordered into the comm. The team split, half following her toward the north stairwell while the rest maintained pressure at the perimeter. They ascended through chaos. Each floor brought new resistance. Guards scrambling to defensive positions, confused by the coordinated assault. Riley dropped targets with mechanical precision. Daniel moved like the predator he'd always been, efficient and brutal. Second floor. Paulo's office door stood open, light spilling into the corridor like an invitation. Too easy. Riley signaled halt, scanned for tripwires, pressure plates, anything that screamed trap. Found nothing, which meant everything. "He's not here," she said into Daniel's ear. "Where then?" Riley closed her eyes, thought like someone cornered and desperate. "The roof. He's on the roof. Wants the high ground for the final stand." They reversed course, climbing higher. The building shook with explosions below. Their team working through Los Reyes' defenses. Bodies littered stairwells. The air tasted like copper and cordite. Top floor, roof access. And standing there, backlit by city lights, was Paulo Reyes. Alone. "Daniel Kang," Paulo said, spreading his arms. "I was wondering when you'd stop sending others to die for you." "Funny," Daniel replied. "Rifle-trained center mass. I could say the same." "These?" Paulo gestured at the warehouse below. "They chose this. Chose loyalty to a cause bigger than themselves." His eyes found Riley. "Unlike some people who fight for nothing but survival." Riley said nothing. Let him talk. "Talking men made mistakes. You killed my father," Paulo continued. "Took everything he built. Now I take everything you love." "You already tried that," Daniel said. "Failed spectacularly." Paulo's expression darkened. He nodded once. And the roof erupted with hidden shooters emerging from behind HVAC units and ventilation structures. Riley moved on instinct, tackling Daniel behind a concrete barrier as bullets chewed the air where they'd stood. Return fire from below. Their team had followed, was engaging Paulo's forces. But Paulo was moving, using the chaos to reach the roof's edge, where a helicopter materialized from the darkness, spotlight blinding. "No," Daniel surged forward. Riley grabbed him. "Let him go. It's over." "It's not. Look," she pointed at the helicopter, at the figures inside. Federal agents, DEA, the alphabet soup of law enforcement that had been building a case. "I made a call 3 weeks ago. Gave them everything. Financial records, trafficking routes, evidence of Minjun's murder. They've been waiting for tonight to move." Daniel stared as Paulo realized his escape route was arrest. Watched the cartel boss's face transform from triumph to fury to resignation. The helicopter landed. Agents emerged. Paulo Reyes went down in handcuffs, screaming threats that meant nothing anymore. Silence fell. Smoke drifted. Bodies cooled. Daniel turned to Riley. "You planned this. All of it. I planned for survival. For ending the war without becoming what we fought against." She met his gaze. "You can't build something new on a foundation of more corpses." He pulled her close, kissed her forehead. "You saved me again." "We saved each other." They walked down through the burning warehouse, past the surrendering Los Reyes soldiers, into a dawn that painted everything gold and red. Emergency vehicles converged. Media would come soon, turning violence into narrative. But for now, they had each other and the knowledge that they'd survived. 10 miles outside the city, Riley's phone buzzed. She checked it, expression tightening. "What?" Daniel asked. "Message from my old handler, the one who buried me when I disappeared. She showed him the screen. 3 words. Contract reinstated. Run. Daniel's hands tightened on the wheel. What does that mean? Means someone knows I'm alive. Means they want me operational again. Means... Riley closed her eyes. Means they'll hunt me until I comply, or die trying to stay free. Then we run together. Daniel. No. His voice was absolute. You stood with me through war. I stand with you through whatever comes next. That's what partnership means. Riley looked at him, searching for doubt and finding only certainty. It never ends. You understand that? Even if we run, even if we hide, something always comes. Some threat, some enemy, some past refusing to stay buried. Then we'll face it. Together. Daniel's hand found hers. I'm done fighting alone. Done believing I have to carry everything myself. If we're going to burn, we burn together. She squeezed his hand, nodded, made her choice. They drove into morning light, leaving Los Angeles behind. 2 people who tried very hard to be civilized, finally accepting what they were. Monsters learning to love each other's teeth. The city shrunk in the rearview mirror. Somewhere behind them, police processed crime scenes, and prosecutors built cases, and journalists wrote stories about violence that would be forgotten by next week's news cycle. But Daniel and Riley drove toward something that might be freedom, or might be another kind of cage. Either way, they were choosing it together. That had to count for something. In a city built on lies, she'd been the only truth that drew blood. And he'd been the only person brave enough to bleed beside her. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was everything. The highway stretched before them like a promise written in asphalt and morning light. And for the first time and longer than either could remember, they weren't running from something. They were running toward it. Thank you for staying until the end. That means more than you think. If this story touched something inside you, subscribe, like, and tell me what you felt in the comments. I read every single one because this isn't just storytelling, it's connection. And if you're ready for the next journey, don't wander too far. The next story is already waiting in the dark.